Welcome to the Association 100 podcast. The A100 podcast is an extension of our Association 100 bi-monthly newsletter that focuses on best practices, top trends, helpful ideas, and smart strategies and tactics that work in the world of associations. The podcast will feature meaningful conversations with association professionals across the country, taking a deeper dive into trending topics, offering insights that both inform and inspire.
Welcome back to another episode of the A100 podcast. I'm your host, Colin Gallagher, and I'm really excited for today's guest and a topic I know will be so important for so many of our listeners. Today, I'm welcoming Amber Worthen, founder and CEO of Email Maven, on the show. Amber is a seasoned communication strategist with a specialization in email marketing. She has a remarkable ability to see the big picture, connect the dots, work with teams, and bring it all together into strong communication pieces for companies. Amber brings years of project management and detailed organization to the table with extensive experience in managing mass email marketing processes for associations and nonprofit organizations. With a background in communications, project management, and website design, Amber founded Email Maven with a passion for revolutionizing email marketing for associations. Her journey began with 7 years at a large association where she identified the need for exceptional email marketing support and staffing. Amber understands the challenges faced by association staff who have a lot to do, little time, and are pressured to achieve big results. And don't we all know what that's like in the association world? Her team at Email Maven is dedicated to getting the work done and delivering the results clients want. Amber, thanks so much for joining us on the A100 today.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Could you start by telling our listeners a little bit more about what Email Maven does and why you decided to build this company?
Yeah, of course. So Email Maven was founded about 5 years ago, and I was working at a large trade association, the American Physical Therapy Association, and I just saw a hole in the market. So I went on maternity leave and I called HireLogic, who was the email platform supporting their email at the time that I was running, and said, can you staff a person for my job for 4 months? I don't have to teach them HireLogic. I just have to teach them my internal procedures. And they said, no, we don't. And I left, went on maternity leave, called HireLogic and said, can I please do that? That's where Email Maven was born, was really just email staffing to start. So I first partnered up with HireLogic with one of my first partners, and we essentially started to fill all of their service gaps. Now, fast forward 5 years and we have multiple service partners now, email partners now, but we service all staffing needs. So maternity leaves, bigger staff gaps, or just associations that like to have someone else do the nitty gritty of emails and they want to focus on more important things. Secondly, we do all things innovation. So as a former association staff, I understand very well how little time we have and how high the expectations are for us. And so we help you get whatever your to-do list is done. So we can help you build out your drip campaigns or fix your integration problems or revamp your newsletters, whatever it is, we're happy to come in and help you. And then third is we help people move email platforms. So if you've decided time to move on, we can help you move fast and ensure that your staff are trained well so they can hit the ground running once they're there.
That's awesome. I love that you've chosen this niche too. And I think it's such an important need for associations. And it's funny because when you think about email, it's like, oh my God, I get so many emails. But when it comes to association marketing, still the most effective tool for almost every association.
Yes, by far. And that's exactly what this really turned into. After kind of just creating a job for myself, I really just saw this hole in the market of associations are relying on email so much. In general, we're not doing it great. So we just want to focus on that and really be experts at our craft.
Yeah. You talked a bit about your background working at the American Physical Therapy Association. So how did that experience really shape your approach to email marketing for associations in general now?
Yeah. So they're a large association. So I had the benefit of an amazing marketing team, communications team, other people handling social media. I handled their website and their email, their So I learned about procedures that really ensure that teams work well together and that not anyone is overly stressed. So some of the procedures that we use there, I use at all the associations we work at now for scheduling and other things. I also learned the importance of data. I had wonderful bosses who just said, take time. It's essential. It's essential that we take time to learn and be curious. And so every month I was held accountable that I had to come to a meeting with a bunch of email stats and say, this is what's going on. This is my recommendation of what to change. And luckily I was in an environment where they loved that. And they said, great, let's try this or let's shift these things. So it really gave me a great foundation of understanding data and taking a risk to see what worked and what didn't.
That's amazing. I'm going to come back to data because I think that's so important. And in anything you do, you should make data-driven decisions. But like I said, we'll get back to that. So one of the things I want to touch on first is the challenges associations facing. What are some of the most common when it comes to email and how can they take those on?
Yeah. So one of the things I do are email audits. So I go into your email platform and I take an audit on what's happening, meaning we pull data, I read 15 to 20 of your emails, I look at design. Is your platform being used to its max? A variety of things. I just finished my 20th audit in the last 2 months for associations. And the number one thing that I wish everyone was doing were applying best practices for email design. It sounds so simple, but one of the problems we saw in all of them just in the last 2 months is that everyone is inconsistent on how they're designing their things. All the colors are different, the sizes are different, their call to actions are different. That makes it harder for your members to find things that they want to see and get comfortable with things. There can be some variation in color, not saying that, but consistency is key. The other biggest problem that we see is email fatigue. So members are tired of your really long emails and the large volume of them that you feel like you need to send. So it's really challenging because of about four of the associations out of the 20, they had extremely low open and click rates. And so we deemed them like your audience is dead almost. They're dead with email. And that's the worst case scenario to be in. It's really hard to bring people back up. So the biggest challenge there is people need to be curious and have honest, hard conversations of when it's time to maybe stop sending an email or completely change an email for the sake of your email list, because your email lists are some of the most important things you have, but yet we don't treat them like that.
That's such a valid point. You don't think of the list being a big deal. It's just, hey, this is who it's going to, but that is probably one of your most valuable assets.
Yeah. And that's one of the big things in corporations they understand, right? If I went to a corporation, I said, oh, you have 100,000 people on your email list, I'd be like, wow, good job, you guys. That's great. That's a huge asset. If you're selling a company, they want to know how many email addresses and phone numbers and addresses you have. It's a huge asset for your association, but we need to treat that with some more respect to make sure they stay around.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also fascinated by the first point you brought up about design. And I feel like that's something associations probably care about, but I wonder if they're coming at it from just not knowing the best practices or just not having the time to implement them in terms of design and making sure that is what it needs to be.
Absolutely. I think it's time. Most of the cases, it's time. They just don't have time to really think about it strategically. What should we be doing and not doing? Also, other problems is some associations have a lot of staff sending out emails. They don't have a centralized one or two people doing it. So you've got 5 to 10 people sending out emails. They're all different. And that's where you can really tell it's bad. It's okay if that needs to be your staff structure, but then limit people. In all email platforms, you can lock in a template to some degree and say you can only use these colors or only these buttons and give guidelines and kind of police people that aren't using it. So time's definitely a factor, and just be a little mindful. So we have a guide. There's lots of other email design best practice guides out there. Just really take the time to apply 5 of them and you'll see a lot of improvement in your emails.
Awesome. I love that. When we're talking about those open rates and increasing engagement, what are some best practices to optimize email to do that?
One is always segmenting. So be mindful of who you're sending your email to. Not all your members need to get all of your emails. The number one crime we see with audiences is just not everyone wants to see it and they don't need it. Email is one piece of an entire communication cycle, right? You've got your website, you have your social media, you've got your paid ads, you probably have some mailers, you might have a community. There's so many things that you have going on that email is still very foundational, but we need to accept that sometimes people are getting their info from other places and that's okay. So segmenting is definitely number one. Be mindful of your audiences and really email only to the people that need that information. And number two is to do drip campaigns. So nurture people along. So let's say call for abstracts for your annual conference. We know you need them and we know there's members that want to give them, but funnel them into the nurture. So we see a lot of associations that send 10 to 15 emails to everyone they know saying, submit your abstracts. Don't do it. You can prove that by the end, they hate you. A ton of them have opted out. They're not opening. They're not clicking. They're ignoring you entirely. Just funnel them in, meaning send the first one to everyone, then the next one only to people who opened that one, then the next one to only people who clicked that one. Funnel over and over again. That's going to give you even better result without causing high fatigue on your email lists.
That's such great practical advice. And I had to keep myself from laughing when you were talking about the segmentation piece, because I can hear myself in meetings at every association I worked at where, but my email needs to go to everyone. And then everyone thinks that. And so you really need that traffic cop who's going to say, no, this is who needs to get this, when, and how many emails have gone out to certain people. And it's just so important. So I love that you're focused there. And I think that's really smart.
It really is critical. Traffic cops are probably the most underrated people at the association. And I did a challenge at the beginning of the summer, and I'm still waiting for anyone to tell me that they did it or not. But I really wish associations would send their staff all of their actual emails to their personal email. So like the association emails that you're sending your members, send to your staff's personal email account. Then see how those conversations change. Because normally the email person is the one that's saying, please don't, we need to make change.
Right?
They're always right. I haven't met a single email executor out there that is, let's email everyone. They're watching the data. They're aware. It's all these other people at the association that are just causing havoc. And so how about you email them everything and then see if their tune changes a little? That's what I'd like to do. We'll see.
That's so funny. We'll have to hear if anyone actually took you up on that challenge, though. That's great. Let's talk email platforms, which I know for some people is the bane of their existence. But despite that, what are the key factors associations should think about here, and where do they go wrong typically?
Email platforms all suck in their own right. That's the first thing to know. None of them are going to solve all of your problems. And so we regularly are in about 7 different email platforms. And there's not one that I'd say this is the one that you should be in. What I tell people instead is pick the one that your data works the best with. So whatever your integration is truly going to work the best with, that's the one you should probably pick. Because we see so many associations struggle because they don't have live data. But their staff are spending so much time pulling data out of their AMS and their CRM, their LMS, and all the things and getting into email. You're just wasting staff time there. So whatever your data talks to the best is most important. And ahead of selecting an email platform, really do an audit on what you really need. We see a lot of times that an IT team will just say, okay, we need a new email platform. Here's some general criteria. But I find that a lot of those times those demos and those deeper conversations are missing a lot of questions. What do we actually need? What do we need for the future of our email? and what really fits our procedures the best. So you got to get really detailed there and ensure that it's going to fit where you're heading. Well,
Yeah. And I love that you've brought us back to data because we talked about earlier, data-driven decisions, they're absolutely crucial, especially in email marketing. What metrics are you prioritizing and why is that the case?
we're still looking at open rates. So a lot of people are discounting open rates. Don't discount them. Recognize that they're a little flimsy. You shouldn't be resting your laurels on them, but they're still critical. We need a data point to know if people are opening emails. So open rates is still one. Click rates is the most critical. And then conversion rates as best as you're able to do. And unsubscribe rates is a big one. So how many people are actually unsubscribing regularly and how often are they clicking? Click-in conversions is number one.
That makes sense. I love to hear you say that about the open rates because I myself have been wondering how we're supposed to look at those for our own emails because you read, oh, they don't matter anymore. They're not right. They're not. But you're right. You do need some kind of pulse, even if you know in your head that it's not exactly right.
Exactly. We just still need to know if our subject lines and pre-headers and friendly froms are working how we think they are. So if you pull the data from back when it really shifted 2 years ago with the Apple update, all of your open rates increased overnight. I think a lot of associations took that as a win. They think they suddenly did something that just magically made their open rates better. It's not, but it's okay. At this point, whatever your average open rate is, that's your new average. That's okay. Keep measuring against that. Keep playing and doing A/B tests on your friendly frowns, your subject lines, and your pre-headers. That's what you just have to do. We have to have some level of data.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you talk about the conversion rates, do you find that most associations are tracking that at all? Or where are they with that?
Most of them aren't because it's hard to do it. So unfortunately for associations, you have data conversions in a lot of different places. So it's hard to mine it out. So it might be in your LMS or your event portal or your Shopify online store. There's a lot of different places it could be. So the closest we see most associations getting is really maximizing the use of Google Analytics and tracking conversion there as best they can. We can also see in most email platforms, you should compare data side by side. So you say, we did send an email on this day, and lo and behold, event registrations spiked the next 2 days. We're going to say that was email. Did we also do paid ads and social? Sure. But those ones we can track a little bit more. So you got to line it up. But Google Analytics is the best way to get your conversions, but it is a hard place for associations.
Okay, that's helpful. And when we think about getting conversions, I think what you talked about earlier with segmenting is probably the best way to get better conversions because you're sending the right emails to the right people. But what do you see as some of the more effective strategies for segmenting email audiences to ensure that those right messages do go to the right people at the right time?
Put yourself in your members' shoes a little bit more. I feel like a lot of times we just eliminate common sense, human to human life. At APTA, one thing we did was we were really trying to target students, right? Hard time getting students converting and staying after their student memberships are up. And so they did a variety of surveys and focus groups and stuff, talked to their student board. And I pulled a lot of data from email about what students were doing. And at the end of the day, we decided this entire email series we were going to do around what they actually wanted, which was nothing about APA. It was about health, like their personal burnout rates and imposter syndrome and all these things that they really were the buzzword when they did all the other research. So what we did though, from an email perspective, and is the thing that I feel like we forget the most, is we really thought about the day in the life of a student. When does a student even want to see an email? They don't want to see it Monday through Friday. You know why? Because they're in class all day, they have homework all day, they might have clinicals or some job or something. They've got something going on. They are more likely to read your emails on the weekends because they're just hanging out. And the same story goes for every other member group, early career, and so on. If you really put yourself in their shoes and say, what age are they? What's probably happening in their life? When do they probably want to look at these emails, send it to them then, is something to really look at. Again, that also comes back to data though. You can see if you send your emails just to students or just to whatever your member types are separately for a month, you'll be able to very easily see when are people actually opening them, when are they clicking them, when are they engaging the most, and then do send things there. Other segmentation is really sending things to people when they say they want it. Again, email people who've clicked previous emails. Don't just keep emailing everyone. If they've clicked it but haven't registered for the conference, that means they're interested. They probably just forgot about it or something happened. So email them again. They raise their hand. And on that line, my favorite thing to do, and I feel like it's the most underutilized thing for associations, are web tracking campaigns. A lot of email platforms have the ability to scrape a little bit of your data off your website and plot people into a web tracking campaign. So if they've looked at your conference website and then didn't register, you can send them 2 emails. Say, hey, our conference is awesome. You should be there. But most people don't do that. Again, any opportunity we can have when a member raises their hand and says, I'm interested in this, email them back then, not just email everyone and hope that they like what we're saying.
Yeah, I love that. It's super practical too. So that's great advice. I'm going to ask you to take out your crystal ball here. Obviously, there's a lot going on with how quickly technology is changing. What are some of the emerging trends in email marketing that associations need to be aware of?
Emerging trends, probably the highest one, of course, for AI. Everyone's talking about AI, but there's 2 practical AI tips that I wish associations were using more, and hopefully they are. Hopefully I'm just not hearing about it quite yet. But number 1 is ChatGPT and others. You can now completely upload images of your email and say, give me feedback. So do that. Give feedback on what to do. We're always happy to take a look and give you feedback, but sometimes you don't have the time or the money to do that. Put it in, get some feedback on your emails, make changes. My second most practical AI tip, and the biggest thing I wish associations did, are creating alternative subject lines, pre-headers, and friendly froms based on your email. I haven't wrote a secondary subject line for 7 months, at least by now. Neither has anyone on my team, or pre-headers. We need to be A/B testing these things, or subject line and pre-headers, as much as possible. So have AI write it for you. Don't even think about it. Don't take the bandwidth. Just plop in your email and say, hey, give me 5 subject lines for this. Try some things out. So that's like emerging. There's a lot of other things with AI that's important. The other piece really is just data. I feel like associations really don't take the time to read the data. So you got to get something down and to stay curious about what's going on and have hard conversations internally when something isn't working out. So if you have emails that are getting less than 5% click rates, be time when your associations say, maybe we don't need to do that. But we have to take the data and stay really curious to make that happen.
Yeah, that's a great tip with the ChatGPT piece too. We just wrapped up a series on the podcast on using AI for PR and some practical takeaways there. And I love tidbits like that people can just try, because sometimes there is that fear of, I don't know how to use it, so I'm not going to try it, or it feels like cheating, I'm going to stay away. But that's a great way to get started with it for people that haven't yet.
Yeah, it's one of our favorite tips. The other thing, really trend-wise, we get often the question of, we're not a corporation, Amber. We understand we're competing in inboxes with corporate emails, but we're not them. We don't have the money. We don't have the time. What can we do to really stand out? And my number 1 tip for that is really play with your friendly from, your subject line, and your pre-header. So those 3 things should be the most important things you're focusing on next to your call to action. What are you actually trying to get people to do? So if people really spent more time testing and playing those things, your emails really open and click a lot better in the long run. But most associations do the same friendly from all the time. That's from your marketing director or from your association general name. Change that up once in a while. And then subject line and pre-headers, mind your best practices, and they'll go far.
Yeah, I remember the last association I worked at before launching Onward and Upward, and that made the biggest change in changing that from. So, and we use it very strategically, but if there was a survey we really needed responses to, there was a policy on the Hill that we needed to fight and we needed to get to hear from, it came from the executive director. It came from the head of advocacy. And they were people that have worked at the association for a long time who the members knew. So to have a from their name pop up in those inboxes, it made all the difference. So that's a really smart tactic to think about for associations and what you're doing there, and to not do the same thing all the time.
Yeah. Especially if you look at what corporations are doing to take that a step farther, definitely use your executive director and your president of your association's name sparingly when you need to. But corporations are also using the friendly froms as the beginning of their subject lines. So if you actually look in your Gmail inbox or your Outlook inbox, think about the friendly from is the first thing you actually read. So be aware they're using it in different ways at the beginning of subject lines. And we're also finding from a data perspective that if you say Amber from Email Maven or something like that, they open better, especially when you are using those executive director and president names. Most people don't really know their full name. Most of your members don't. So just say whoever from your association acronym. Keep it short. That's actually who they will know.
Yeah, that's great. Amber, this has been awesome and so much really good practical advice for our listeners here. Before we let you go, we like to wrap up every episode with our just for fun portion so people can get to know you a little better too. So we'll jump into our lightning round here. Tell us, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Bountiful, Utah.
All right. What is your Starbucks or morning drink routine?
My morning drink routine right now is 100% like coconut water and electrolytes because it's hot and I feel dehydrated all the time. So if I'm at Starbucks, it is a mango dragon fruit refresher for sure with coconut water.
I love that. Need those electrolytes now. It is insanely hot. That's for sure. All right. If you won the lottery tomorrow, would you still work?
Yes, I would.
All right. What's the last show you binge watched? Or if it wasn't a show, it can be a book.
The last show I binge watched was Growing For It on Magnolia Network.
I haven't seen that one. I'll check it out. Food you can't live without.
Anything Greek or Mediterranean. Can't live without.
Nice. And our last one, what is your bucket list travel destination?
Thailand, for sure.
Nice. Great. Well, Amber, thank you again. We appreciate you joining us on the 100 today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Association 100 podcast, brought to you by the A100 publishing team, powered by Onward and Upward Marketing and Communications. You can subscribe to the Association 100 podcast on Spotify so you'll never miss out, or listen via our website at theassociation100.com. Follow us for all the latest insights and trends impacting the world of associations. Thanks for tuning in.